Really want to acknowledge each one of us in this sanctuary for showing up today, for giving ourselves today. We are living in interesting times, are we not? We are living in interesting times. And it's kind of like Christmas Eve this week, but there's something coming, but it's a different kind, you know? And I know from my angle, and I know from people that I work with, that there are a lot of people needing support in these days. And so we're here for a practice, yeah? And that practice is about bringing body, mind, spirit together, right? Into harmony. So that we use and utilize our divine and creative potential in the highest possible way, the maximum level, right? For the maximum number of moments. We have only one moment, right? If you've done any work with Eckhart Tolle and his work, The Power of Now or A New Earth, you know about kind of entering that portal to the truth, which is there is only one moment. It is this now moment. And in this now moment, we have the energy that we show up with. And that energy we teach in unity is magnetic, is alive, is dynamic. It draws to it itself, right? It draws from it more of the like. And it even impacts the lens in which we see, right? It can frame. Has anyone had the same eyeballs that you've had your whole life, right? But without a spiritual practice, you see things one way. And with a spiritual lens, you have a whole other tool. And the world around you and the world within you changes because of how you showed up for it. How I showed up for it, right? So, in times when the ego or the human condition or the separate sense self is grasping, pleading, wishing it could control outer circumstances, outcomes, and creation, what do the prayer principles teach us? They teach us to go more deeply within. Go more deeply within. So, I want to thank Martha Creek for walking us through this season. We are on the last chapter Sunday of our Adventures in Spirituality season. Next week we'll have a Q&A Sunday, and we have already tons of questions from the groups. But I also invite you, if you've been a part of this series, if you have any questions, any things you want to hear more about, anything that didn't make sense or you didn't like or whatever it is, anything you want to have it spoken to or you wish had been included, go ahead and write that down on a piece of paper and put it in the offering basket as you leave today, or write it down and bring it with you next Sunday, and we'll take those and we'll be doing a service on those. But Martha's book, Presence and Potential, Experience Your Higher Self and Live into Wholeness, is the book that we've been studying. And I want to just thank Martha Creek for taking us on a journey, and a journey through the fall and through an interesting election year, yeah? Right? It's amazing, the divine appointments. It's amazing how the chapters of this book lined up so perfectly with what's going on in the collective and what many of us are present to. I had the gift of being at one of our amazing congregational families' daughter's wedding this last weekend. So it was an honor to get to experience that and be a part of that wedding. And at that wedding, the father of the bride gave just a gorgeous speech. It was one of those speeches that had the right moments in it, that zing you, that just make you go, oh, just make your heart open up. And I was watching this couple, and one of my favorite things, and I'll be gifting them this, is a poem by James Dillett Freeman, and I share it in weddings that I do, but one of my favorite parts of this poem is a little bit about having the wisdom to take the first step back. That in times of stress, in times of trouble, in times of you fill in the blank, have the wisdom to be the one that takes the first step back. How often can we benefit from this practice in our lives? But we have to be willing to take the first step back. So this week in Martha Creek's book, the first step back is about allowing time to process, she said, and seeking solitude. Can you see how relevant this could be this week? Allowing time to process and seeking solitude. Now, we're going to get into some important distinctions. Allowing time to process is about our feelings and allowing ourselves to be present to our feelings, not to stuff them, not to shove them. But it can also be about emotional regulation, right? But there's a distinction. What does that mean? What does emotional regulation mean? Does it mean I just act like I don't have feelings and I show up just peaceful all of the time? What does it mean at the depth? And so we'll go into that a little more. And then also seeking solitude. What is seeking solitude? What is that as a practice? What is your practice? What is my practice around seeking solitude? And is it important? What does it mean? Lao Tzu said, do you have the patience to wait until your mud settles and the water is clear? Right? Do you have the patience? Maybe it should say have the patience. Have the patience to wait until your mud settles and the water is clear. This reminds us of the spiritual practice, to let it settle first and take action from a place of mindfulness. All the rest is normal, ordinary human condition, right? But when we take action from these wild places, from the muddy waters, we generate from there, right? And then we have a lot of cleanup work to do, don't we? We do have a lot of cleanup work to do. Pema Chodron, the spiritual Buddhist monk and teacher, said, only to the extent that we expose ourselves over and over to annihilation can that which is indestructible be found in us. Ugh. Do you ever feel like that in this human condition in your life? Like, do you ever feel like life can be that annihilating experience? And from that, when you've gone through that in one sector or one area of your life, you build up a strength that you're like, okay, never again. I'm grounded in this field. I'm grounded in this area. Lean into the possibility that we're doing that collectively now. The possibility that collectively we're experiencing the same thing that happens in the microcosm in our own lives, in our own beings, that actually generates more clarity, generates more strength, generates more resilience. But we're doing it in the collective. You know, it's funny, when it turned from 1999 to 2000, you know, everyone's like, ooh! We didn't know today was coming. It's like it came a little bit late. But the human condition is often one in which we are not mindfully raised, not mindfully taught. And then we continue this process with ourselves. We continue this process with ourselves. And so we can often end up without a practice when it comes to our emotions, how to show up, how to process, how to get our spiritual needs filled. I want to share with you a video from Dr. Becky Kennedy, who has a lot of good information out there on raising children in a mindful way. And I share it with us today, not just about raising children, but about raising the child within and raising the child consciousness within the collective, right? Raising it up. And there's some backtracking that needs to happen in order to do this because we have often been taught with each other, and we're doing it right now in the collective. Okay, so take this and take this as parenting, take this for yourself, take this for the collective and how to show up in the collective. Because is there anyone here right now that's going, no, don't say that, don't think that, get that away from me, right? I mean, validly so, human condition, right? So breathe into this for a moment. Dr. Becky. We'll try to get the sound fixed here in a second.
To the child, say that to the child right away.
And here's to me is the first line every parent needs in their toolbox. I'm so glad you're talking to me about this.
To the child, say that to the child right away. When they're stressed out, when they're angry, upset, shameful, any unsettling emotion that you don't enjoy yourself, say back to them, I'm so glad you're telling me this right now.
That's right. I'm so glad we're talking about this. Because, and again, if we think about it in an adult context, if I was like, I'm so mad at my husband, he never, whatever it is, he never is home for bedtime, and he forgot the one thing I said, and if I was like, hey, like, you're never doing anything around the house, and I'm really frustrated. If he said to me, you know what, Becky, well, you're upset, but like, I'm so glad you're telling me about this. Like, you know, relationships, I'd be like, I think we're good now. Like, I don't even know, what was I upset about? Like, because what someone's really saying to you when they say that is this feeling in you that you're feeling is real. And I still want to be in a relationship with you when you're feeling that way.
Yeah, I still love and accept you.
That's right. And so our kids need to absorb from us, from a resilience perspective, my parent can tolerate this part of me before I learn to tolerate this part of me.
Wow.
So that's line one. Line two, I believe you. I always say, like, if there's one line that would be probably the most healing in people's childhoods and the most confidence building from childhood, it's that. And it's so simple. Like, because when you say to someone...
What if you really don't believe them, though?
Well, there's always something you should believe. So right? Because, like, they're like, I didn't make the lacrosse team, and, and like, I'm never going to be able to go to school again, or something like, it's so embarrassing, right? I'm not saying, I guess, you can never go to school again. That's not what I'm believing.
Right. I believe that's how you feel.
That's right. And you don't even have to say that, because underneath our kids' extreme verbalizations, we get very caught up in their words.
Yes.
They represent a world. We believe the world. Mm-hmm. And so even though, like, I'm never going to school again, I would say, like, I believe it feels that bad. And because I do.
Yeah,
it does.
It does.
And it's like, it is. Like, he's on that bench. Like, right?
Especially of someone at that age who doesn't have the skills of emotional resilience, so they're building it still, and they haven't figured out how to manage those emotions. It seems horrifying.
That's right.
It seems terrifying.
That's right. And if my kid says I'm the only one who didn't get a chapter book, you know, I got this picture book and everyone else is reading chapter books, it's so easy to say, oh, you can't be the only one. We actually say to our kids all the time, which terrifies me, I don't believe you. And if we wonder why people don't trust their emotions, it's because when they felt emotions that were strong, they received, not one time, over and over, a message of, I know your feelings better than you know your feelings.
Or just suck it up, or it's not that big a deal,
That's
or
right.
just kind of undermining their emotions.
That's right. And so when I think about I believe you, I do. Like, I have a daughter, right? I have 3 kids, I have a daughter. And like, I don't know how, I always picture like she's at some like college party in some like kind of uncomfortable situation, let's just say.
How old is she now?
How old is she now? She's 9. But
Okay,
let's just say she's
in
now.
the future.
She's 20 and someone's like, I don't know, come back with me. And if she wants to, great. But let's say she doesn't.
Yeah.
You know, in those situations, be like, it's not a big deal, you know? Right. Do I want her self-talk to be, I do have a history of other people knowing what I'm feeling better than I know what I'm feeling? Or do I want her to be like, I know I don't want to go home. I'm going to cry. Like, I believe myself. And this person is telling me I want something else, but like, how could this person know? Because I know what I'm feeling. Wow. And those things are completely related. And so that's the second line.
Wow.
And then the third line is equally simple. It's just tell me more. Tell me more. Oh, and then, so they posted the list on the pin board. Wait, so everyone was there. Oh my goodness, everyone was there. And let's say I knew my son had a crush on someone. That person was there too. And you were like so excited. You were gonna like be on the lacrosse team, and that person saw
that you failed. And
exactly. So I'm just like fleshing out the story. And now at all these moments that my kid was in pain, which, by the way, part of the pain was probably that they were alone. I'm kind of infusing myself in every moment. I'm adding connection, I'm adding believing. And here's the thing about the bench. In my experience, when you kind of go through this, your kid gets off the bench before you do, every time.
Really?
And then you're like, I guess where are they going next? And when they need you,
they'll come back.
Yeah, or you find them on that next bench.
Interesting.
So breathe in for a moment and just allow your mind to bring that teaching to your own life, to how you've grown up, and then expand it to what's going on in the collective. We have entered an era where emotional intelligence is no longer an option. We have entered an era where emotion, belief, and feeling is now the dominant conversation. It is the leading energy. I know it's a crazy disappointment to many of us that the era of science and proof and those things that we grew up valuing has now evolved. But if we keep our minds in the past and we don't recognize the evolution of consciousness, then we will miss the opportunity to use fully our co-creative faculties. The thing about emotions and beliefs leading is that this is what unity was born in and born for. We understand it. We know it, right? And it's here right in front of us on the collective level. It's here among us. Now we know if you've done any inner child work, if you've done breath work, if you've done XYZ, you name it, the work that you've done. Because friends, you don't get to unity without doing a boatload of work. So even if I don't know your story, I know you've done a lot of work. You've done reading, you've watched things, you have looked into your own life, you've looked into your childhood, you've probably had therapy, you've probably done a million things to become self-aware. You know, right, if you've done this work, you know that the inner child, an inner angry child, a person inside that's not being heard or not listened to, you know what happens, right? They get louder and louder. Can you reason with them? No. Do you argue with them? Pointless. What do you need to do? Presence it, right? Presence it. And that's how the healing occurs. It's not by pushing it away. It's not by shaming it and telling it to go under a table. Come back out when you're willing to be peaceful, happy, and lovely. And we're all guilty of it. Like, I watch these videos so that I can bring my practice into my parenting. Because believe me, I have told my daughter, I don't want to be around that. Go into your room if you're going to do that. Stop. The time has come for us to use our practice, not only for our own inner healing work, but for the collective. Because there are things that are uncomfortable, there are things that we don't like. I'd even verge to say there are things that we hate and we don't want at all and don't want to be around, right? But what happens in the human condition and on the planet and in religion and through nations when we keep dividing and separating, when we keep pushing away and slapping or hitting or moving, we have war. We have war. A war against ourselves, a war against humanity, a war against nations, a war against religions. And we know our principle and our practice is that we strive for love, harmonizing, for wholeness. We acknowledge that. We acknowledge that as a principle and a practice, wholeness. So can we let go of the fear and can we begin to really lean in for listening? Really lean in with a deep listening for what's going on now within you and in our world so that we become and create the place for healing. These are the times we were built for. These are the times we were built for. If you don't believe it, well, check if your body's still here. Right? Wednesday morning is the time you were built for. So is Thursday, so is Friday, so is the breath work on Tuesday. I'll be there. I hope to see you there. If you're not learning a whole boatload about yourself right now, you're missing an opportunity that's right in front of you. If I'm not learning a whole boatload about myself right now in my practice, I'm missing right in front of me. There are things going on in the external, and they're important and they're real. And how we show up for them, how we show up for ourselves, how we show up in community, how we show up for our family, our state, our nation, our world, matters. How are we showing up to our life, to conflict, to anxiety, to getting our way or not getting our way, to fears about life and death, to fears about creation and destruction, to right and wrong, evil and good, or to checking out? Checking in or checking out? There is no time like right now to learn about yourself and your practice and the depth of who you are. Because triggers. There are a lot of triggers right now, right? So many people want a spiritual practice that they can try on theoretically, right? It's like, I want to work on my marriage, but not when things are going bad. I want to work on being mindful, but not when I'm angry, right? I want to work on my insecurity as a human being in the human condition that can be so uncomfortable. I want to be present to that so that I can learn about my divinity. So I can learn more about who and whose I am on this planet and who you are. What we are here to be and to do. I want to share a little bit from Martha Creek's chapter this week. She talks about allowing time for things to process. And a little history about me. I have learned this, and I would have to say, within the last 10 years. But I was always one of those people, and you know them. Some of you are them, and some of you live with them, and some of you work with them or friends with them. Those people that when something's up, they need to work through it now. And it doesn't matter what the conversation's like or how uncomfortable it is. I'll sit in the fire with you. I'll sit in the discomfort because we have to keep going until it's resolved. Right? It can get ugly. It can get crazy. It can get wild. But I'm not okay if it's not resolved. That's the piece that I didn't realize. That's the piece in my own practice that I didn't realize. I didn't realize there was a part of me that wasn't okay if we're not okay. If we're not okay, and you fill in the blank of what we are, right? That can be your job, it can be your relationship, it can be your health, whatever it is. But I'm not okay if we're not okay. And so I would push it. And it scared me to let go. It scared me because I thought, if I let go, we will never solve this, resolve this. It will only get bigger. It will only get worse. And what I learned through the mindfulness practice is no. What happens sometimes when we allow spaciousness is that you come back and half the stuff isn't there anymore anyway. I lived over half my life not knowing that. Really not knowing that. Like really thinking, and it takes endurance, it takes strength, and it takes courage to be present, right? To be present and keep working through things even when they're uncomfortable. But there is also a beauty to giving space and having spaciousness. So think about our own discomfort today. Think about the times when we're like, this is not okay, we're not okay, I'm not okay, it's not okay. Think about for you what that process might be about. Notice whether you're okay, even in the midst of discomfort. There's your internal work. There's my internal work. You can take a mindfulness pause. I'm not going to go too far into it because I don't want the anxiety in this room to raise. Am I okay? Am I going to be okay? What do I allow in to steal that peace? To let that peace be something that's delivered to me from the world rather than drawn out from me through the Spirit. Just talk to a Buddhist for 10 minutes and you'll be like, oh, okay, I'm a little more okay. Martha Creek. She starts it with saying how intolerant or arrogant. I was going to cut that part out. But she said, I was trying to rush the human process, trying to rush emotional process. My innocent and very naive quick fix mentality was that we can hurry through pain or rush past discomfort or rush past discomfort or rush past discomfort. Instead of allowing time. Just like a fever, events in our lives take the time they need to burn off. The process could last weeks, months, years, or even decades for some. We don't get to pick how quickly something is moved through us, how quickly something is healed, or how quickly something is understood. It's ineffective for us as leaders, as individuals, to think we can rush a process or not be more patient. Be tolerant, accepting, and strategic in allowing time, whatever amount it is, to pass. She goes on to say, timing is none of my business. Could we affirm that together? Timing is none of my business. So can we be about our business? Can we give ourselves time to process? Because we're often taught not to be with what's up. Seeking solitude. One of the greatest things someone ever said to me was at a wedding, and I was having a painful moment, and there was a lot going on that had kicked up a lot of my core issues. And some core issues relating to family. And I was feeling like, name it, I was feeling it as far as like lonely, victim, forgotten, not included, actually actively attacked, like all these things at someone's wedding that I was singing at, that I was at with my whole family. And I remember a moment I remember a moment looking over a ledge at the wedding where you could see far down. And I remember wishing, not ever wanting to, not ever thinking I actually would, but wishing if there was a way, if there was a button, I would like to get out of this pain. And I remember just standing over it looking. And a friend of mine, a friend from Ireland, who was also at the wedding, came up to me. And she intuitively kind of knew some of my history and knew a little bit about what I was going through and could see the dynamic. And she came up to me right next to me and she put her arm around me. And I hardly had to say anything, but I probably said a little to confirm that she knew what was going on. And she squeezed me tight and she goes, I have that too. I've had that too. They will never understand you. Let go of ever trying again now. Let go of trying to be understood now. You will never be understood. They will never get it. I get it. They will never get it. And I held to her, she held to me just a moment with women. And the number of times that has come back to me to strengthen me, this is the power of solitude. Solitude isn't running away from things that we hate. Solitude is being willing and able to stand alone, to stand for yourself, to stand in the space of being misunderstood, abandoned, alone, whatever it is, whatever your biggest triggers are, fill in the blank. But in those moments, not to abandon yourself, not to abandon the wholeness. Accept solitude. Seek solitude. Blaise Pascal, the French philosopher and Catholic writer, said all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. What is your solitude practice? What is your solitude practice? Ram Dass said, the quieter you become, the more you can hear. As a mom, it's interesting, isn't it, having a solitude practice? You get creative. Before I was a mom, I had a lot of solitude, and I loved my solitude practice. Now my solitude practice includes a 6-year-old. So can you get creative? If you don't have the opportunity, if you think your life is too busy, too loud, too much motion, movement, too many things to do to have a solitude practice, then kick up your mindfulness practice and learn to develop the silence within that comes with you no matter what's going on around you. Slowing down to almost a stop. Have periods where you take the time. You take things out of your schedule, whether it's a Sabbath, whether it's camping, golfing, fishing, sabbatical, whatever it is. Once a week, whether it's a time where you just take that phone or take all those devices and you put it away and you deal with the fact that no one else likes you having time of solitude. No one's going to give it to us. It's only going to be given to us if it comes through us. Martha said this, sometimes we're going to stand alone. Others won't understand us. It may appear that others are not there for us. They don't support us, they're against us. This is where the practice of accepting solitude comes into play. To take time away to think and to get clear about who you are, who you've come to be, who you have come here to be. To think about what is yours to do and what is not yours to do. What is your responsibility and what is not your responsibility? Take time, be quiet, use prayer, fasting, restoration, silence, reflection, and reading. Whatever helps you remember you. Some way for you to remember what is true for you and what is not. Take time in solitude. I hope that gives a deeper understanding of what it is. We all have experiences where we know we feel ourselves, we feel our nature. It's those times in life, like for me, I know this might seem funny, but it's like going to a music festival. When I go to a music festival, I get so in touch with myself again. But find what that is for you, and if you know what it is, give it to yourself. Not solitude, she says, in reaction of like, I'm out of here, but solitude that's purposeful, intentional, that says, I need to clear my own mind. I need to get clear about my own thinking. I need to clarify what I will do and won't do. I need to clarify it through my best thinking, not emotional reactivity, until I see what possibilities exist for me. It's energetically getting off the grid. She goes on to say, to accept solitude in your life means not pushing against solitude. Many people want the benefit of solitude, but their self-talk is so strong they can't even be alone with their own thoughts. Practice being in a room without distraction and background noise. Practice accepting the everyday solitude that occurs in your life without filling up that space. Eckhart Tolle says, stillness is where creativity and solutions to problems are found. Rumi says, and I want to bring up this slide, there is a voice that doesn't use words. Listen. This is the lens of the Hubble telescope, and then the lens of the Webb telescope. This is the power of our lens. This is the power within. Remember, we are part of this. Allow spaciousness and opening up to life as it is. Lean in and embrace miracles unfolding. Namaste.